All right, I'm going to attempt something relatively large scale here. It's going to be the battlefield. So I have a whole bunch of samples that I can place in a field, and we'll see how it goes. So I'm going to add, I'm going to switch my microphones to an XY cardioid pair. Go to single view here. I'm going to add a particle group to create a battle. In this particle group, I'm going to set it up as a box, and I can set my width distance measurement to be miles inside of my preferences. So preferences will show your units as whatever you want them to be, so I can shift it from yards to miles. Let's make this a 1 mile width with a 0 height. Everything's going to be ground level. Well, we'll call it 0.003 height. If I switch that to my front view, I can see exactly how much that is. Maybe 0.03. And we will make the minimum 0, so everything is above us or not. So there's that much variation in the landscape. 1 mile in either direction here. Now, I'm going to add a bunch of explosions. It starts out, it defaults to 100. I think 100 is going to end up being fine. You know what? I'm going to back it off to about 35. We'll say there's 35 big old explosions that end up going down. The excellent Tonsturm Distant Explosions library has a whole bunch of beautiful things in it. So we're going to add some of those guys to our library. Distant Explosions raw sounds like this. Just some really nice stuff recorded from real far away. We can add some modifiers to it. We'll add some random gains, and we'll add a little bit of some random time and pitch. Maybe keep it within about 5 semitones. And then to make sure they don't all explode at once on us. Actually, that seems like it'd be fine. So if I render out exactly what we're hearing here. Now what happened here is all of the explosions kind of went off at once. So if I want to stagger them a little more, I can go back into my audio modifiers and add a delay, which would delay the start of it. And we can say up to about 15 seconds worth of delay. And we can change the way that the delay is distributed, right? It defaults to randomly across the probability, but you can actually ramp it up, which would make sense with regards to how a battle would actually go down. So without even rendering it, we can see exactly how that would show up and disappear. Rendering it down now, these explosions should happen a little bit more in increasing intensity as the battle goes on. Yeah, it's really nice. This kind of distant battlescape. And if I wanted to have it do something different, I just reset it, re-render it, look at it again. Cool. All right, so let's add another layer here. So we can add another particle group. We're going to call this ricochets. We're going to start him in a box. And we'll keep these guys a little tighter. We'll keep them within a half a mile of us. It defaults to 100 particles. I think 100 particles would be fine. Let's add some audio files to it. Frank Bree has an excellent ricochet library. So I'll just add a bunch of files from that. There's 64 of those guys. So as it updates that, the ricochets before processing sound like this. So we can do something similar with regards to audio movement. So pause that guy. Modifiers, so we can randomize the gain. We can randomize the time and pitch. Say within 3. Randomize the delay. Again, if I don't randomize my delay here, they're all going to start within 2 seconds. So I want them to all start within about 30 seconds. And you can see what that did to my timeline there. Let me actually slow that up to within about, we'll say, well, if I do 1 second, no, we're going to say 20. See what happens there. Wow. So those guys are actually getting, I'm getting rained down upon there. So if I change my delay distribution, again to a ramp where it ramps up, and let's change my number of particles down to about 50 here, because a lot of those seem to have a bunch of ricos built into them. Actually, let me change it. Let me just drop it to 20. Nice. Now, because a lot of these files seem to have a lot of multiple iterations within them, I can just move those things around. So I will add on my ricos a velocity where they will scatter off in random directions along the X and Y, not necessarily along the Z. And without rendering it, I can kind of see what I did just by dragging my timeline around. So I'll see some of those things moving around. I can even move them faster. And I can start spinning them with the rotation. So that gives me a nice little bit more randomization to when those ricos actually start showing up. Yeah, so the density feels much better there. Okay, so now I can chuck a little particle emitter in there and start firing off helicopters. So we'll call this helicopters. We're going to fire off one, we're going to say 0.2 particles per second for about 10 seconds. Let's say we'll do it for 20 seconds. And we'll say 0.3. So that adds up to 6 particles. We see the math show up there. And I'm going to do a particle emitter just like I did before. So I'm going to add for my audio files some echo collective helicopters. Just a few of them. Just like so. Those are nice long runs. Now I'm going to give the emitter a location, starting point. We're going to put it on the on the x-axis, so they come by us 1 mile away. To move my particles. So I should see helicopters coming by me here. Now I'll probably want to start them closer to me than that, so that they go by me in some sort of reasonable fashion. And I can probably move them even faster. And spray them out a little more. All right, let's see what that does. Looks like I had one helicopter jack up my entire gain structure. So I'm going to move my point source for those helicopters, put them in front of me a little more. So on my y-axis, move them half a mile in front of me. Actually, maybe not quite half a mile. Let's move them 0.4. 0.2. It's more like it. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah. Really, I can even move them closer. If I really want to hear them. Yeah, that's more like it. Yeah, so something like that. And again, I can play with my balance a little bit. Now, if I want to play with my balance in post, one option that I have when I actually export this thing is, and I can change my distance attenuation too, but I kind of like where my distance attenuation is. On my mic system, when I render it, I've got stems of all three, the distant explosions, the Rico, and the helicopters. In order to render stems, I'd have to mute out the parts that I don't want to hear. So, give myself explosions there, render that, give myself Ricos. Render that. And then helicopters. Render those guys. And then I can rebalance them in post. I wish it was easier to rebalance them in the software. It's kind of not. With that said, it's a powerful way to put that many items out there in the field, in the world around you. And then you can basically globally control distance with your distance attenuation. So if I want everything to sound a little closer, I attenuate it a little less. And then everything will sound a little closer when I re-render. So there we have that. It's powerful software. It's got a steep learning curve. It's got some quirks. It's obviously very young. It needs a couple of things. I'm definitely going to submit a feature request list for a whole bunch of stuff that I would love to see it do. But that's the overview. It's pretty cool. It is available for free if you are a student, but you can't use it in commercial projects. $300 otherwise. In my opinion, when you get that Doppler set right, it's worth the $300 on its own. So there you have it, sound particles. Okay, I'd like to just add a little addendum.